friends, Queen of Flannel here. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to part 2 of our Mythographic Mythomarch community color. So I did not have time to film a intro like I usually do this week. One of our cats had a full teeth extraction surgery, so I had all of the footage recorded, but I ran out of time to, film anything additional, and I'd already started, trimming and cutting and whatnot. So we're just gonna jump into the project. I will quickly just kind of recap. So this image was selected by the community as part of our community color for this month. So last month, Ryan Colors hosted, and for March, I hosted, and we are working in Mythographic Menagerie, and this was the image that was chosen, the Jackelopes, and I am working with the Gansai Tambi watercolor set from Kuretake. This was a lovely subscriber gifted this to me off of my Amazon wishlist, so that is what we're working with. If you missed part 1, I will pop a little tab up in the upper right corner there for you to go and watch that. And if you are interested in coloring along, you can use our hashtag Mythomarch and tag me over on Instagram, and I will share your work to my stories. So right now I am just kind of going in and touching up some areas that I had worked on in the last part, and starting to add some detail work, some shadows. This was kind of tough because I was doing a lot of mixing of colors, and I guess this is true of, any paint medium, is that you have to be mindful of mixing up more than you think you need, because if you don't and you run out, and you have to mix up another batch, it is going to be very difficult to get the exact same mixture. So I was kind of working back and forth. If I was doing a lot of mixing, trying to make sure that I worked across the similar elements so that I didn't run out of whatever colors I had mixed. And there are some instances where I had to, remix in the middle of I had to mix in the midst of, part of that I was working on. And so some of the tonal values are a little different across certain elements, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be a complete mirror, in I was okay with it. I'm probably the only one that's going to be able to tell. I highly doubt anybody else is going to notice, but that's a perfectionist, detail-oriented thing right there. And I did notice as I was working on this jackalope, on his antlers and trying to add in some of the shadowing, that the other jackalopes antlers were very, very light in comparison. So I think that's about what I'm going to get into here. Is I did end up mixing up, I can't remember what the color name is, and I don't have the paints in front of me, but it was a very light cream color, and I just mixed a little bit of the brown in with it just so that I could darken up the lighter portions of that second jackalope's antlers. And so I actually thought that this video was going to be quite a bit longer than it ended up turning out to be. We were talking about this in the live stream the other day, whether or not people would watch if it was potentially an hour-long video, because there was quite a bit of footage. I think I filmed this over 2.5 hours. But once I sped it up and cut out all of the cuts where there were big gaps where I was mixing paint and where I had stopped to change the music on my music player, it ended up coming out to be about a reasonable amount. And so I've been trying to stick with, 30 to 45 minutes for my Saturday videos. I feel like that's a pretty decent amount for people's attention spans. So it worked out in the end. And so I am just using the lines that the artist gave in going in with, have I switched brushes yet? I have. Okay, so I'm working with a size 2.0 round brush. This is one of my Craftimo bamboo brushes. I really like these brushes for watercolor. They hold a pretty decent amount of water, and they're soft and flexible. Now, I've tried a few of them with thicker paints, and not a super fan of using them like for gouache or whatnot. I mean, they work, but they're not my favorite brushes for that medium. But for fine detail work, this brush is really nice, so I grabbed this one to go in and just do some additional work on some of these flowers. And I had a hard time deciding how I wanted these to look in terms of detail, so I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to do softer blends, or whether or not I wanted to keep some of the harsher edges. So I kind of played around with it across the flowers, and so some of them in the end ended up with harsher lines, which I don't hate. It's a stylistic choice. I know some people prefer like smoothing out all of those, those lines, and so I tried a couple different things, just to see how I felt in the end. And some of them in the back, I felt like maybe the softer blends worked because they would be a little bit more shadowed than some of the pink flowers in the front, where the light might hit them a little bit more. So I left some harsher edges on those front pink flowers, and in the back, I went in with a blue here that wasn't quite mixed the way I wanted it, so it looked a little funky. But once it dried, it turned out. And I really had a lot of fun playing with these paints, and I mentioned it in the last video, but I felt like they were they're somewhere between gouache consistency and a watercolor consistency. So they're very thick and creamy when you are taking just the pigment out of the containers, and a different viscosity than tube watercolor. It's hard to explain. I'm trying to think of something real worldish to compare it to. But I did feel like I had to use a fair amount of water to get them to the consistency to be able to do a flat wash. So at this point, I am starting to work on the little tea kettles or teapots. And originally I thought about doing these in blue. And then I had thought about doing them in just the whole teapot in this tan, brown, reddish brown color. And then I decided to just do the detailing, the little ornate, the flowers and whatnot, and around the spout and the lid in this color, and then kind of treat the rest of it like I would if I was coloring a white object. So just doing shadowing with a gray paint, and it ended up spreading out a little bit farther than I thought, but I'll talk about that once we come to it in the video. But yeah, so for right now, I'm just working again with this really tiny detail brush and going into these areas and going over the little ornate details. And so one thing that I did find with this paint is that it goes down fairly opaque if you're working with more pigment than water, but once it dried, some of that line work underneath actually, you know, came back essentially. So like right here, you can see that a lot of the lines were covered by the paint, but as it dried, they kind of reappeared. It was weird. I don't know how to explain it, but because I didn't want to completely get rid of the line work. And so I went in with a fairly light wash of this because I knew I was going to come back in later and do some detail work over top of it in some of those little like crevices. And actually this mixture was one of the tan cream colors, and there's a very like vibrant pink. I think it's cherry blossom pink is what they call it. And so that was what my original mixture was for my wash on these kettles. And I'd also decided like I wasn't gonna be too like precious with staying inside of some of these like lines and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of detail here, and there are times where I don't want to get bogged down in trying to accent every single little like nook and cranny of things. I feel like, especially with these books and even with some of Kirby's books, that's one of the things that makes them feel intimidating for some people. And I know that I still feel that way. I think maybe over time I've gotten a little bit braver with my choices and not feeling like I have to, you know, touch every single little detail. Sometimes it's just nice to just Elsa it and let it go and just paint. And if you go out of the lines, especially when you're working with watercolor, it is a tough medium if you're trying to, you know, master it. And I mean, I'm not a professional, so I think it's a tough medium to master, but it can also be really forgiving, because if you make a mistake or a happy little accident, perceived happy little accident, if you catch it, you know, soon enough in the process, it can be fairly easy to correct. You know, you can lift the paint or go in with just a wet brush and smooth things out. So it's not something that, like an acrylic, where if you let it dry and then realize you don't like what you did, that you can't come back in and make adjustments to. Now, that being said, different paints react differently. Different papers react differently. So there are some colors that are going to be easier to lift than others. There are going to be some papers that are easier to lift from than others, and so that's just one of those things that you kind of have to decide for yourself whether or not you want to test it out. Sometimes if I'm not sure how the paper is going to behave, I will find a page in the back of the book, and I'll just usually like in the back there's one of those little pages where they have the you know, buy this other book and I'll just go in and I'll just, you know, throw some paint down and play around with it, or I'll find an image that I don't really care for and, you know, muck about on it. But sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just take the leap and go in and trust the process and see what happens. But I know that not everybody is comfortable doing that. So, and this is where I feel like I kind of took the gray a little farther than I had wanted. I originally was just going to do like those little lines that the artist gave us, and then I just kind of kept going with it, and so they did come out fairly dark in the end, but I wasn't unhappy with them. So, and I think this was my attempt to kind of like smooth some of it out. It was just, this was a me thing. I was trying to smooth it out and I ended up pulling the paint out farther. And what I probably should have done was just grabbed another brush with just water to make this attempt. But these paints, like I said, are fairly creamy consistency. So if you're not careful of washing your brush out, and I mean, like, I have a paint puck with the little like ridges in the bottom. Actually I didn't have my paint puck out when I did this, so I used the paint puck the last time, and it really worked well to get like that excess paint out of the brush, because it was to the point where I'd pull the brush out of the water and the paint was inside the bristles, so I couldn't see exactly how much was left on the brush, and so then I'd go to mix something or, you know, touch something, and there'd be a completely different color than what I wanted to use in there. So just something to keep in mind with these paints. So I am working on this little smoke. Well, I guess in my instance it's water. You could probably color it as like steam, and I had originally thought about doing it in gray and making it look like steam, but that was when I was also toying with the idea of using this blue on the background. And then I changed my mind partway through and decided that with everything else going on in this image and the colors that I was working with, that I was going to forego doing a background, and I really wanted to bring in the blue paints by themselves. I had used them in a couple mixes for some of the other elements, but I hadn't used just the blue, and so I ended up doing this like we were pouring water from one tea kettle to the other. And for these, I don't know what that was. There was a couple moments where I got a little overzealous and my paintbrush like flew out of my hand. It was kind of funny to watch sped up. It looked like I was doing some kind of like juggling with the paintbrush. But anyways, back to these little like droplets. I just went in and added a little bit of the blue kind of around some of the edges. I didn't want to color the entire like droplet. I feel like it gave it some of a, you know, that see-through transparent quality of water. And now I'm going in with a darker mixture and adding a little bit more shadow to some of these little guys. And around some of the edges of the actual like water. And I think I went in a little too dark with this. And I probably could go back in with just a damp, wet brush and blend some of it out, soften it up a little bit. It almost felt a little too harsh for what I was going for, and that little random over there. I had gotten some orange paint where I didn't want it, so it was bothering me. I just grabbed a wet brush, one of my other brushes, and just tried to like lift that paint out. It didn't really work, and I'm not sure what happened with my camera there. I think the autofocus got turned on and it picked up the brush. My light hit the brush and made it like a reflective surface, and the camera just decided it was going to focus on that. Nope, that was another brush flip. Yeah, I got a little too dark with that lid on that kettle. Way darker than I had anticipated. And here I was just trying to add in a little bit of like a cast shadow where some of those flowers might be over top of the edge of the pot there. And so this image is done. I was really pleased with the way it turned out in the end. And you can kind of see, like, I feel like I do this quite a bit, especially in these, like, speed videos. Like, I see it when I'm editing. You can kind of tell when I'm getting down towards the end of the project, because I kind of start to take more pauses and assess where I want to wrap the image up. But we still have a little ways to go here, so. And this is that was a bigger brush. I just came in there, so I'd swabbed my brush out and just came in with a wet brush, trying to smooth out some of the gray on that kettle lid, and it didn't really work. I felt like I would probably have to scrub at it a little bit more, and the paper was still pretty wet, and I didn't want to risk ripping it or pilling it, so. Seriously, with the brush flips, like, I just did it again. I watched it. It's like brush acrobatics. So I'm just using, well, I was just using a wet brush at that point to smooth things out, and trying to be mindful of not putting my arm in the wet paint. So now I am working on some of the foliage and going in with a darker mixture of paint and adding in some shadow areas behind the antlers and bringing back some detail on some of these leaves and in some of the stems. And this was another area where where I totally lost my train of thought. There's a cat crying outside my door and I got distracted. Sorry. Where I just wanted to touch up some things, and some of these like really minor little minute little details that were kind of hidden in here that I didn't notice or completely missed on the first pass. So I felt like these on the sides, because they were pretty, prominent, they weren't hidden behind anything, I wanted to bring back some of the detail here on these. And so I'm just touching up at the seams. Oh, cat hair. So my female cats, who if you were in the last live stream, you got to see quite a bit of, they like to come up on my desk sometimes. And so there's always cat hair in here. I have to make sure I vacuum my desk before I paint, and apparently there was some errant hair, but that is life with 4 cats. It doesn't matter how much I vacuum, there will always be cat hair in my house. So this one I had to be careful with because I didn't want it to be too dark farther up, those leaves closer to the right. I wanted to keep just the details in the areas where they'd be a little bit more in shadow, and make sure that I didn't pull my my darker paint out into my lighter green there. And I will link to all of the supplies that I am using in the description below if you're interested in picking up the book or the paints or the brushes. The links will be in the description. So I bounced around this image quite a bit, and that was partially because I was trying to keep some symmetry. So if I colored one object on one side, I wanted to make sure that I tackled it on the other side, and also just to give certain areas a chance to dry before I went back in with any additional layers of paint. So if I look like I am haphazardly floating around the page, that's probably why. And sometimes there's just, you're working on one thing and you see a spot or an area on something else that kind of sticks out in your brain. And for me, I find that if I see it, I need to fix it relatively quickly, or else I will forget that instantaneous moment of what I wanted to do with it. And then if that happens, it's like I'll remember I wanted to do something to that element, and I'll get to it, and then I'm like, I can't remember. So sometimes I have to just fix it on the spot. So now I am working on bringing back some detail in these little ornate. These kind of look like, what are they, filigrees, I think is what they're called. What they kind of look like. I just felt like they needed a little detailing in some of the etchings that are in the line work. So, and I had to be real careful not to take this too far. And this area up around the edge here is another one of those areas where I was not going to go in and color every single little piece of this. So I just picked some areas to kind of accent, and then blended some of the color out around it. That is a style choice. I could have gone in at the end with a colored pencil and done some additional detail work, but I really wanted to stick to just using the paints on this project. It has been a while since I have really done any watercolor. either like coloring in a coloring book or otherwise. So it was fun to get back into a different medium. And I used to do a series called Watercolor Wednesdays, where I worked with a water medium, but it got to be really difficult to manage doing multiple series like at a time and multiple videos a week. We've talked about you know, change in format. So yeah, I got a little heavy-handed there, so I just went in with the paper towel and tried to blot up some of that that paint. So that spout was a little dark. I think I was getting just a little like antsy here. And this was a lot of back and forth. I was having trouble getting my pigment to water ratio on my brush right. It had a lot of like excess water on my brush, so I kept going back and forth and trying to like blot it off, but then make sure that I still had enough paint and enough water on my brush to be able to, you know, continue doing what I needed to do. So we are winding down to the end of this project. So what I'm going to do is outro us and let the last little bit play with some music. So I had a lot of fun working on this project. It was really cool to be able to host the community color along this month. Again, if you want to color along, the book is Mythographic Menagerie and our hashtag is MythoMarch. You can tag me over on Instagram so I can feature your pages. I would love to see what you do with this. That info is in my About Me section as well as the description below. So thank you guys so much for all of your support. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please consider a like, a sub. It helps YouTube's algorithm pick my videos up so more people see my content. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!